Hi everyone, it's Katie, and seeing as it is nearing the end of 2017, I thought I should get started with my favourite deck videos that I do every year. I decided to do Oracle decks first, my favourite Oracle decks of 2017, because I have a lot less Oracle decks, a lot fewer Oracle decks than I do tarot, so it's just a lot easier. So I have 8 decks with me. 2 are kind of honourable mentions, but these are just the decks, the Oracle decks that I just really had a lot of fun with this year. Not my all-time favourite, there's a couple of all-time favourites that I just didn't really get a lot of use out of this year, but these are the ones that I loved this year, 2017. Let's start with the honourable mentions. The honourable mentions, well, the first is an honourable mention because I haven't been using it a lot. It's only just the very end of this year, but I've had it for such a long time. It's the Wild Wisdom of the Australian Animals deck, I think is what it's called. How are we going to do this? I'm not used to this, obviously. This is the backing. Now, this is an old deck that's out of print now, so I won't show you too much. But it's one that I've had for a long time and just never really used. But the end of October, I just drew a card. It was the echidna. I drew a card for my friend and I were going on our first really big bushwalk, and so I thought I'd draw a card for us, and it was just really beautiful. So this has become our bushwalking card, and I'm hoping next year to try and connect with the Wheel of the Year a little bit more. I feel like I say that every year and it just doesn't quite work, but I have a new plan of attack this year, but I feel like this deck might come in handy for that, connecting with the Australian seasons and animals and experience. So it's an honourable mention because it's such a new favourite. Not a new deck for me, but a new favourite. And the second honourable mention is because it's a very new deck to me. I got it about a week ago, a little more than a week ago. It's the Life Design cards by Lisa McLaughlin. And I got this deck not too long ago, and I did an unboxing of it, and I'm just obsessed with it to the point where I've asked Blair for her other 2 decks for Christmas. Although the last time he bought me a deck it didn't end so well, so we'll see if it happens. But I'm just really obsessed with this deck. I've been drawing cards from it every day. I've done a couple of little readings and it's been ridiculously synchronistic and direct, like crazy. So I am really loving this deck, but as I said, it's so new to me, so it has to remain an honourable mention, but at the same time I still wanted it in here. I'm so in love with this deck. It's so fabulous and so fun to work with and just on point. Okay, now on to the actual favourites. The first I'll talk about is the Wisdom Keepers Oracle, which I did a pretty extensive review on earlier in the year. It comes with, if you just buy the deck, you do get like a mini book. It's still the full book, it's just smaller, but it's really lovely. I do also have the larger book up on my bookshelf, but this deck is intense and really incredible. That's the backing. I don't use this deck too often because it's really intense and really, it's really full on, and there's so much in here. I mean, you could spend 1 year with one deck card, to be honest. But they're so incredible. This deck's just amazing. There's just so much detail in the cards, but then also in terms of the guidebook. Like, there's several pages on each card, and I feel like she could have gone further. There's a lot of different systems that are used in this deck, so it's a very layered, complex, deep, rich experience, and it's just such an incredible deck. I love it, I really do. So I don't use it too often because it can be overload. But when I use it, it's such a wonderful experience. And it's just been such a wonderful deck to have gotten this year. It's just a real gem in my collection, and one that I've just loved this year so much. Next is another one I've done a review on. It's the Flowers of the Night Oracle by Sherilyn Darcy, who is an Australian author, and I feel no shame in sharing this deck anymore because I know quite a few people were upset with me showing this deck at all, because it was a very limited edition and is now out of print. But Rockpool has picked it up and they're publishing it again soon, hopefully. So it will be back, and I've actually ordered a copy of the new edition because I love this deck, but there was a few issues with the guidebook, and from what I've heard, she's improved it. But the deck itself is just incredible and so beautiful. It's my favourite of her decks. A second would be the Australian Wildflowers, which I gave away a while ago and I'm feeling like I really need back in my life. But this is just such a beautiful deck. And it's been a really nourishing one for me. It's very heavy and dark, as you might expect, and it expects a lot from you if you're going to be working with it. It's not going to baby you, so it's intense, but it's also just really loving, like harsh love, like tough love, the love that you need. Yeah. It's just a beautiful deck, and I've had just really beautiful experiences with it that I can't quite explain. So that's why it's in my favorites. And plus it's just gorgeous. Isn't it just beautiful? Sherilyn does the most gorgeous artwork. Next is a fun little one. I love this little deck. This is the Floret Oracle. And it's so cute. It's very little. It's like I guess a poker size. I hear people say that all the time, and that sounds right. It's small, and I bought this originally to go along with my Fantastic Menagerie because it is based on the artwork of JJ Granville, as is my Fantastic Menagerie Tarot by Bubba Studios. Bubba Studios did create an oracle deck in the same vein as the Fantastic Menagerie called the Victorian Flowers, which I would love to get my hands on, because even though it is based on the same artwork, Bubba Studios did their own thing with it. They made it a little bit creepier. So I would still really love to have that deck, but this one is a very, very close second to that deck for me. It's so wonderful. It's a really cute, playful, fun little deck. Has not quite as much of the sarcastic, satirical kind of energy as my Fantastic Menagerie, but it certainly plays alongside that really nicely. It's kind of like a quieter, gentler, softer kinder version of that. Like it still has that kind of little humor to it, but not quite as sharp. Which is good for an oracle deck, to balance out the Fantastic Menagerie, which is one of my favorite decks of all time. So obviously this is an oracle deck that I've come to love, and I use it with the Fantastic Menagerie, but I also use it on its own. And this deck is actually one of the few oracle decks actually that I use more often with a 3 cards draw than I do with a 1 card. Most of the time with oracles I do tend to just draw 1 card. Sometimes I'll draw 3, whereas with this deck it's the other way around. I'll usually draw 3. But it's a beautiful little deck, and I'm so happy I found this one. Someone told me about it when I was looking for the Victorian Flowers, and I was so excited to find this one, and it's a bit of a bargain too. Next is another little deck that I got on one of those print-on-demand sort of websites, and that I don't think has gotten enough love, although I understand that it's a bit of a niche deck, but I think it's less of a niche than people think it is, if that makes sense. It's the Elements of Recovery Oracle, or cards, by Beverly King. This comes with a downloadable PDF guidebook. I have written the keywords on the cards. And this is based on the 12 Steps program of AA, but without all of like the Christian kind of connotations. It just kind of really brings it back. And obviously I have been sober 4.5 years, but have really struggled with alcohol and substance abuse issues in my short time. But I think, and I still struggle with those thoughts and stuff around alcohol, but 4.5 years on, I have noticed that I have a lot of the similar sort of thoughts and tendencies around a lot of different things in my life. And my perfectionism is very much tied to all of this in a weird way. And so I found that this deck is really good for those kind of just habits that I don't really know why I do, but I keep going back to. Those crutches that I hold on to really strongly. The things that my perfectionism kind of makes me do to keep in control. All of this, or the avoidance. I'm either like obsessively controlling or avoidance with my perfectionism. So this deck, even though it is, you know, based on the principles of AA, it's not just for alcoholics. And it's not just for drug addicts either. It's or sex addicts or just addicts. It's not just for addicts, even though, you know, that obviously it can do wonders for that sort of stuff. I think it's just also for people who have habitual tendencies that aren't healthy, who kind of notice that they're going back to the same thing over and over again, even though they know it's not right for them, whether that's a relationship or food or whatever it is. This deck just kind of gets you really checking in with why you're doing that and what you can do to stop, or at least to challenge those thoughts a little bit. So it's a little bit more on the therapeutic tarot side of work. I'm sure you could probably use it more as an oracle, but I definitely use it more for that personal development stuff. But it's one of my favorite go-to little oracle decks, and I love it. The next one will come as no surprise to anyone who's known me more than 5 minutes. It's the Dreamtime Reading Cards by Laura Bowen. This is one of my favorite oracle decks, or is my favorite oracle deck of all time, and definitely up there for the ones that I've used most and loved most this year. I've edged mine in black, which, you know, I think kind of looks cool. And this is just one of the most incredible oracle decks in the world. And one that I use fairly often. It's not the sort of deck that I would want to use all day, every day, all year. That might be a bit too intense, I think, after a while, but I use it once a week. You know, it's just such a wonderful deck and so rich. I feel like I've said all of the wonderful things, like every positive adjective anyone's ever used, I've managed to use to describe Laura Bowen's work, or this deck specifically. I'm sorry, Laura, if I sound like a bit of a fangirl, but I can't help it. Look how beautiful this is. And it's not just a pretty face. This deck, it'll make me cry, it'll give me a hug, whatever I need, it just kind of puts right in front of you and says, alright, this is what you're dealing with today. This year and every year, I love this deck. And to be totally predictable, the sister deck, the Saltwater Reading Cards. Although, I don't think this was a deck. It took me a little while to get into this deck. I think primarily because Laura sent this to me as a thank you for always talking about her Dreamtime reading cards. You're welcome, Laura. I can't help it. I think it took me a little while to get into this deck because I received it right at the beginning of winter, and unlike the Dreamtime reading cards, which feels very holistic, this deck feels very summery to me. And so it was last summer that I really started pulling it out. And it went back away for winter, but it stayed until about March, and then went back away for winter, and then it's kind of come out again October-ish. So I feel like I've spent enough time with it, and I've loved every minute of it to justify putting it in my favorites video. Just because it's a seasonal deck and I don't use it all year round doesn't mean it can't be a favorite. And when I do use it, I use it every day for 3 or 4 weeks. You know what I mean? And then I'll go away for a little while, and then I'll use it again every day for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. Or it's the sort of deck that I use a lot when I am using it. And I love it so much. It's got such a fresh, vibrant, awakening sort of feeling. Like running into the ocean on a hot day, but the ocean is so cold. Especially down here with all the water off the south. I don't know, it's just very invigorating, this deck, and it just makes me smile. I did a review on this deck not too long ago, so I'll link that if you're interested. Yeah, I think Laura Bowen's work is beautiful, and I love both of her decks. They're the best. I think we did that in pretty good time for a favourites video. So I hope this video was okay. I would love to hear what your favourite Oracle decks for 2017 have been. If you have a one favourite or a top 5 or a top 10, tell me all about them. I'd love to hear. And I will talk to you all again soon. So much love, guys. Bye.